Once again, welcome to the Global WarWatch Network, and of course to the Deep Dive. Imagine a high-stakes aerial chess match unfolding thousands of feet above us, where the smallest tactical advantage, maybe just a single unseen missile, could instantly shift the balance of power.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Picture how a seemingly straightforward decision about a defense sale can send ripples across continents, reshaping alliances and global strategy.
Exactly. Modern air combat is far more than just jets and pilots. It's an incredibly complex ecosystem of technology, politics, and, well, hard-won historical lessons. And that's precisely what we're plunging into today.
Indeed, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most pivotal weapons in this arena, the Advanced Medium-Range Air-to-Air Missile, universally known as the AIM-120 AMRAAM. We'll trace its journey from, a concept born from battlefield lessons to its current role as a true cornerstone of global air power. And it's constantly evolving, constantly meeting new threats.
And then we're zooming out from the missile itself to explore the intricate, sometimes bewildering, world of foreign military sales, or FMS. This isn't just about transactions, right? It's a strategic chessboard where every move has profound geopolitical consequences, revealing the subtle and sometimes overt dynamics of international relations.
For this deep dive, we've gone through a stack of really insightful sources. We've got a comprehensive Wikipedia entry on the AMRAAM itself, an insightful RAND report that really dissects the complexities of FMS.
And we've also looked at a recent article from Bulgarian military discussing Pakistan's pursuit of advanced missiles, which is very current.
Very current, yeah.
Mhm.
And a crucial report from the Center for International Policy on broader U.S. arms sales trends. So each piece gives us a unique angle into this whole topic.
So what exactly is our mission today? We're going to pull apart the layers of this critical weapon, see how it actually works, and then zoom out to look at the massive geopolitical forces shaping its journey, from a factory floor to battlefields across the globe.
And by the end of this deep dive, you'll not just understand the tech, hopefully. You'll grasp the intricate market and the complex human relationships that truly underpin international defense.
Get ready to connect some dots you might not have seen before and experience some serious aha moments along the way. Okay, let's unpack this journey by starting at the very beginning of beyond visual range air combat. It wasn't always about fire and forget or, precise radar guidance.
Not at all. Early air-to-air missiles were, by today's standards, much simpler, primitive in their operation, but they represented a revolutionary step at the time.
Absolutely. So if we're setting the stage for the AMRAAM, we absolutely have to look back at its predecessors, especially the AIM-7 Sparrow.
That's right. The Sparrow really represents the genesis of beyond visual range, or BVR, combat for the U.S. It was the U.S. Navy's first operational air-to-air missile with this capability, purchased from Hughes Aircraft way back in the 1950s.
So with the Sparrow, we're talking about the true dawn of BVR. For listeners, what did that truly mean for air combat then? How far could this pioneering missile really reach?
Well, for pilots and air combat doctrine, BVR was a total paradigm shift. Before this, air-to-air engagements were almost exclusively within visual range, often, devolving into dogfights where pilots maneuvered to get behind an opponent. BVR meant you could potentially engage and destroy an enemy aircraft you hadn't even seen yet, relying entirely on your radar and the missile's guidance.
Relying entirely on instruments.
Exactly. The early Sparrow had an effective range of about 12 miles, or around 19 kilometers. Now, the very first versions were what we called radar beam riding missiles.
Beam riding, how did that work exactly?
Think of it like the launching aircraft projecting a very narrow, invisible beam, and the missile would literally try to follow that beam straight to the target. It was foundational, yes, but somewhat clunky in practice.
And that initial beam riding concept had its limitations, didn't it? I mean, it meant the launching aircraft was very much committed to that single engagement.
Precisely. The beam riding approach meant the launching aircraft had to keep its radar beam directly on the target throughout the missile's flight, which could be, minutes long depending on the range. This severely limited the launching aircraft's tactical flexibility. It forced it to fly a predictable path, making it vulnerable itself.
Right, not ideal in a complex fight.
Not at all. So the evolution from beam riding was critical. It quickly improved to become a semi-active radar-guided missile. This was a significant leap. It meant the launching aircraft, like say an F-4 Phantom II, would illuminate the target with its own radar, essentially painting it with radar energy, and the Sparrow would then home in on the reflections bouncing off that target.
Okay, so the missile's looking for the reflection from the launch aircraft's radar.
Exactly. It still required the launching aircraft to maintain that radar lock for the entire duration of the missile's flight, but it was far more robust and, well, less restrictive than pure beam riding.
The F-4 Phantom II, such an iconic aircraft of that era. How did the Sparrow's integration with the F-4, particularly with those distinctive underbelly recesses, really define its role?
The F-4 truly became synonymous with the Sparrow. It was designed, especially the early Navy, Marine, and Air Force versions, without an internal gun. It relied entirely on missiles.
Really? No gun at all?
Not initially. That was added later. The definitive AIM-7 Sparrow was its primary air-to-air weapon, and you're right, they were often carried quite visibly tucked into those 4 underbelly recesses. This reliance on missiles really highlighted the shift in air combat doctrine towards radar-guided BVR engagements. The F-4 became a powerful interceptor designed to engage targets from a distance.
So the Sparrow was a good start,
Right.
defining the BVR concept, but then came something even more ambitious, something that sounded like science fiction back then. The AIM-54 Phoenix long-range missile. This sounds like a whole different beast entirely.
It truly was a beast, and frankly, a marvel of its time. The U.S. Navy developed the Phoenix for a very specific, very demanding mission: fleet air defense. This was all about countering incoming waves of cruise missiles and bombers at very long ranges, protecting the aircraft carrier battle groups way out there.
And to do that, it had to be large and incredibly fast.
Large indeed. It weighed around 1,000 pounds or 500 kilograms and could hit speeds of Mach 5? Just think about that.
So what kind of aircraft could even carry something like that? Most fighters weren't designed for such heavy payloads back then.
Its size and weight were truly prohibitive for most aircraft. Originally, it was envisioned for specialized platforms like the straight-wing Douglas F-6D Missileer, a dedicated missile platform concept. Then it was slated for the navalized General Dynamics Grumman F-111B, the naval version of the TFX. But ultimately, it only saw service with one aircraft:
The Tomcat.
the Grumman F-14 Tomcat. The Tomcat was literally the only fighter of its era capable of carrying such a heavy missile, and it could carry up to 6 of them. Its massive engines, its robust airframe, they were built with the Phoenix in mind.
But the Phoenix introduced a truly groundbreaking capability for the U.S., didn't it? Something that redefined what a missile could do, moving beyond the Sparrow's limitations.
Yes, it was a monumental leap forward. The Phoenix was the first U.S. fire-and-forget multiple-launch radar-guided missile.
Fire and forget, that's the key phrase.
It is. Unlike the Sparrow, the Phoenix used its own active guidance system to track its target in the terminal phase. The launch aircraft, the F-14, didn't have to maintain a continuous radar lock. Once the Phoenix was launched and its own radar activated, the F-14 was free to engage other targets, maneuver defensively, or even turn away. This dramatically increased tactical flexibility and, critically, pilot survivability in a multi-threat environment.
And the strategic impact of this was just immense. A single F-14 carrying 6 Phoenix missiles could theoretically track and destroy up to 6 targets as far as 100 miles, 160 kilometers away. That capability was absolutely unprecedented.
Completely unprecedented. It truly represented a paradigm shift in fleet air defense, allowing engagements at ranges that were unimaginable just a decade or two prior.
Yeah.
For the first time, naval battle groups had a formidable long-range shield against massed air threats, extending their defensive perimeter far, far beyond the visual horizon. This was the real aha moment for long-range autonomous missile engagement.
It's hard to overstate how significant that leap was. So with the Sparrow establishing BVR and the Phoenix pushing the boundaries of long-range fire and forget, it sounds like the stage was perfectly set for the next evolution, the AMRAAM. What were the specific shortcomings these earlier missiles still couldn't address?
That's a great question, because even with the mighty Phoenix and the matured Sparrow, which by the 1990s had significantly improved its reliability and actually accounted for most aerial targets in Desert Storm, there were still critical gaps. The Phoenix, for all its power, was huge, it was expensive, and crucially limited to only one aircraft, the F-14. The U.S. Air Force, which had passed on the Phoenix and its own similar AIM-47 Falcon program for the YF-12 interceptor, had different priorities.
Right. The Air Force needed something different.
Their vision wasn't for a heavy, specialized interceptor missile. They needed a multiple launch, fire and forget capability that could be integrated onto their more agile, multi-role fighters like the F-15 Eagle and the F-16 Fighting Falcon. They wanted the Phoenix's firepower and autonomy, but in a much more compact, versatile package.
It wasn't just about range or power anymore. It was about versatility, adaptability, fitting into the rapidly evolving fleet of smaller, nimbler fighters.
Exactly. Adaptability became a core requirement for what would become the AMRAAM. It needed to fit across an incredibly wide range of platforms, far more so than its predecessors. Think about the engineering challenge. It had to fit into the same physical spaces designed for the older Sparrow on the F-4 Phantom. That ensured backward compatibility, simplifying upgrades.
And then you had the European partners involved, too.
And the requirements became even more stringent with European partners and NATO. They needed it integrated on aircraft as small and distinct as the BAC Harrier, a jump jet.
A jump jet carrying a medium-range missile.
Yeah, that represents a significant size and weight constraint, pushing the limits of miniaturization and efficiency.
And the U.S. Navy also has specific needs for their new FA-18 Hornet, didn't they?
Right.
It wasn't just about carrying the missile, but optimizing for other missions, too.
That's absolutely right. The Navy wanted the capability to carry 2 AMRAAMs on a single launcher, originally designed for 1 Sparrow on the FA-18 Hornet.
Double the missiles in the same space.
Exactly. Crucial for 2 reasons. First, doubled the air-to-air missile loadout. Second, it freed up valuable space on other hardpoints for more air-to-ground weapons, really enabling the Hornet's multi-role promise. It meant the Hornet could be both a potent air-to-air fighter and a formidable attack aircraft, all in one sortie.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting for me. The F-22 Raptor, this new 5th-generation fighter, totally different design philosophy, all about stealth. How did that influence AMRAAM's development?
That's a critical point, and it reveals a profound design interaction. The F-22 Raptor, with its revolutionary stealth characteristics, needed AMRAAM to fit entirely within its internal weapons base. Any external carriage would compromise its low radar cross-section, essentially defeating the purpose of its stealth design.
So the missile couldn't stick out at all.
Not even a little bit. This requirement directly influenced the missile's physical design, leading to the development of variants with clipped control fins, smaller surfaces, to allow it to be tucked away neatly inside. So what this tells you, the listener, is that missile design isn't just about making a better weapon in isolation. It's about deeply integrating it into the very concept of the aircraft itself. It's not an accessory. It's a fundamental part of the aircraft's identity.
A symbiotic evolution, changing how air combat is even conceived. It's a true systems of systems approach.
Precisely.
That's a truly profound point.
Mm.
And the birth of AMRAAM wasn't just a U.S. endeavor. There was significant international cooperation involved, right?
Yes, absolutely. The AMRAAM was actually developed as a direct result of a NATO agreement, the Family of Weapons Memorandum of Agreement, signed back in 1980. The grand idea was to share production technology and development efforts across the alliance, avoid duplication.
Makes sense. So how was the work divided?
Under this MOA, the U.S. would take the lead on developing the next-generation medium-range missile, which became AMRAAM. Meanwhile, Europe, specifically the UK, leading a consortium, would develop the next-generation short-range missile, the ASRAAM, Advanced Short-Range Air-to-Air Missile. The intention was true collaboration, aiming for standardization and shared capabilities across NATO.
A truly collaborative effort, then, aiming for standardization. Did it work out exactly as planned?
Well, that was the intent. While many European nations did indeed adopt AMRAAM, becoming key partners and customers, the ASRAAM development didn't quite follow the initial MOA's spirit of shared development. It ultimately became primarily a British development, though interestingly, they did source its advanced infrared seeker from an American company, Hughes, the same one that originated Sparrow.
So collaboration yielded AMRAAM, but competition and national industrial priorities still shaped the overall outcome.
Interesting. It always does. Nevertheless, the initial AMRAAM variant, the AIM-120A, began deployment in September 1991 with U.S. Air Force F-15 Eagle squadrons. The U.S. Navy followed suit in 1993 with its FA-18 Hornet squadrons. It quickly became the new standard.
It's always fascinating to see how global powers react to these advancements. Did other countries develop their own equivalents once AMRAAM emerged?
Absolutely. Competition and collaboration, they're constant forces in defense tech. The Russian Air Force, for instance, developed the Vympel R-77, which NATO gave the code name AA-12 Adder. Some in the West even dubbed it AMRAAMsky due to its similar role and, crucially, its active radar guidance.
AMRAAMsky, huh? And France, they often go their own way.
They did, and quite ingeniously. France took a distinctly different approach with its MECA concept, Missile d'Interception de Combat et d'Aérodéfense. It used a common airframe for both a radar-guided and an infrared-guided version. Incredible flexibility for pilots choosing the right seeker for the scenario.
That is clever. Common body, different heads.
Exactly, and of course, Europe eventually began developing the MBDA Meteor as a direct competitor to later AMRAAM variants. The Meteor uses a ramjet engine for sustained propulsion, which theoretically gives it a larger no-escape zone, the area where a target can't kinematically outrun it. What's fascinating here is how international collaboration and competition continuously shape the global defense landscape, pushing tech boundaries and influencing strategy worldwide. It's a never-ending cycle.
It really highlights the dynamic nature of it all. We've journeyed through the demanding birth of the AMRAAM, understanding the pressures that shaped its design. But a missile, no matter how revolutionary, has to perform. So let's pull back the curtain and dive into what makes this weapon such a formidable force. How does it actually work in action? What are its core operational secrets?
Okay, so the AIM-120 AMRAAM is specifically designed for beyond visual range, all-weather, day and night operations. A key technological leap, as we touched on, was its active transmit-receive radar guidance. This is a huge improvement over the semi-active receive-only guidance of the Sparrow. It means the missile itself emits radar waves and tracks its target, rather than just passively listening for reflections from the launching aircraft's radar.
Right, so it becomes fire and forget much earlier in its flight, freeing up the launching aircraft sooner. And there's a specific brevity code NATO pilots use when they launch one, right?
Yes, absolutely. NATO pilots use the brevity code FOX-3 when launching an AMRAAM.
FOX-3.
Hearing FOX-3 over the radio immediately tells other pilots in the formation that an active radar missile is airborne and guiding itself. They know what's happening, they can adjust tactics accordingly. It's critical combat comms.
Can you walk us through its two-stage guidance system? How does it get from launch to target, especially at long ranges where the target might be miles away, completely unseen?
Certainly. When an AMRAAM is fired, especially at longer ranges, it employs a pretty sophisticated two-stage guidance process. In the initial interception course stage, just before launch, the aircraft passes crucial target data to the missile. This includes the target's precise location, its direction, its speed.
Where does that data come from? The launching jet's radar?
Usually, yes, from the launching aircraft's own radar. But importantly, it could also come from other sources, maybe an infrared search and track system, or another fighter via a secure data link, or even an AWACS aircraft orbiting high above, seeing the bigger picture.
So it gets a starting point in a direction.
Exactly. The missile then uses its built-in inertial navigation system, or INS, to fly a precise interception course toward that predicted point in space, relying purely on this pre-launch data and its internal gyros and accelerometers.
So for listeners, an INS is basically like a very sophisticated internal map and compass. It knows where it started, knows the direction and speed it needs to fly, even without external signals like GPS, at least initially. It keeps the missile on track until
its own radar takes over. That's the second stage. As the missile closes on the target, typically within a certain predicted range, it varies based on target maneuvers and speed it enters the terminal stage. At this point, the missile's own active radar switches on, searches for, acquires, and locks onto the target for the final guidance and impact.
And that's the true fire and forget moment.
That's it. Once the missile's active radar is engaged and successfully sees the target, the launching aircraft is theoretically free to break its own radar lock, engage other targets, or turn away defensively. Huge boost in tactical flexibility and survivability.
It means one aircraft can potentially engage multiple targets almost simultaneously, right? Launch, 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 then get out.
That's the ideal scenario, yes. It dramatically changes the dynamics compared to the old one-lock, one-kill Sparrow engagements.
That's a huge advantage. Are there any other operational modes, say, for closer engagements when things get more visual?
Yes, for closer range engagements, or what we sometimes call within visual range, or WVR, maybe even dogfight scenarios, there's an additional feature called boresight visual mode. This allows the pilot to quickly slave the missile seeker to their direct line of sight, usually by looking at the target through their head-up display, or HUD. It gives flexibility across the spectrum of combat scenarios.
So it's not just a long-range sniper. It can adapt if the fight gets close and personal.
Exactly. It ensures the AMRAAM isn't just a BVR weapon, but can be used effectively in closer-in fights if necessary.
That level of sophistication is incredible. But of course, the real test is combat performance. How has the AMRAAM actually fared in the skies? It saw action remarkably early, didn't it?
Indeed. Its first operational use came remarkably soon after deployment. December 27, 1992, a U.S. Air Force F-16D Fighting Falcon, flying over the southern Iraqi no-fly zone established after the first Gulf War, successfully shot down an Iraqi MiG-25 Foxbat.
A MiG-25, a very fast aircraft. And wasn't there an interesting story about that specific missile?
There was. What's particularly interesting, maybe a testament to its robust design despite early teething issues, is that this specific missile had actually been returned from the flight line as potentially defective just a day earlier.
What?
Some minor technical glitch?
No way.
Yes. It was checked, cleared, reloaded, and went on to achieve the AMRAAM's very first air-to-air kill. Talk about a comeback.
That's an incredible detail. Talk about turning a potential write-off into a historic victory. And didn't take long for a second kill to follow.
No, it didn't. The AMRAAM scored its second victory just a few weeks later, in January 1993. Another Iraqi jet, this time a MiG-23 Flogger, shot down by a USF F-16C, again over Iraq. Since then, the AMRAAM has achieved a total of 16 confirmed, verified air-to-air kills across various conflicts: Iraq, Bosnia, Kosovo, India, Pakistan clashes, and Syria. It's a proven performer, a real workhorse.
16 confirmed kills. Can you give us a few more examples of its engagements? Where has it been particularly effective, maybe even some surprising uses?
Certainly. The Turkish Air Force has used the AMRAAM quite effectively in recent years, showcasing its precision in complex environments. They shot down a Syrian MiG-23 in 2014. Then, 2 Syrian Su-24 Fencer Strike aircraft in 2020, and also an L-39 Albatross trainer light attack jet, again in 2020, during operations over Syria.
An L-39. That's a much smaller, slower target.
It is, and interestingly, the Turkish Air Force holds the confirmed record for the longest-range AMRAAM kill with an AIM-120 C7 variant, hitting that L-39 Albatross at approximately 45 kilometers, or about 28 miles. That's quite a testament to its range and accuracy, even against less sophisticated targets.
That's quite a range for a confirmed kill. And we also heard about its use in the context of Pakistan and India.
Yes, Pakistan confirmed using the AMRAAM in an aerial engagement with India in February 2019. There were claims and counterclaims about downed aircraft on both sides, but the use of AMRAAM by Pakistan F-16s is generally accepted, although specific kill claims remain, let's say, unverified by independent open sources.
Right, the fog of war there. Any other uses?
Yes, the missile has also been used effectively by Saudi Arabia to shoot down Houthi drones launched from Yemen. This demonstrates its versatility beyond just traditional fighter-versus-fighter combat. It proves effective against smaller, slower, but still very dangerous aerial threats like UAVs.
Drones are a huge part of modern conflict, so that's a relevant capability.
Absolutely. And perhaps on the less successful side, there was a rather unusual incident in August 2018 where a Spanish Eurofighter Typhoon accidentally fired an AMRAAM during a training exercise over Estonia.
Accidentally fired one. What happened?
Thankfully, it landed in an uninhabited area without causing any harm or injuries, but you can imagine the scramble to find it and the diplomatic conversations afterwards. It highlights the power you're dealing with.
Wow. That certainly highlights the power, even when unintended. You can imagine the radio chatter, a vivid reminder that even with all this sophistication, things can go wrong. But accidental firings aside, it's clear the AMRAAM has been a remarkable workhorse globally, and it's constantly evolving, right?
Yeah.
Continuous upgrades. Let's talk about its variants. What were the early models like?
The initial production models were the AIM-120A and AIM-120B. The A variant, the baseline, isn't in production anymore. It laid the groundwork. The B variant started deliveries around 1994. It introduced improved electronics, a better digital processor, more memory, upgraded hardware chassis. These were crucial foundational steps for the evolution that followed.
And then came the C variant. This seems quite significant, especially with those distinctive clipped aero surfaces, the fins. What was the purpose of that design change?
The AIM-120C deliveries began in 1996, and yes, it has been steadily upgraded ever since. Those smaller clipped aero surfaces, or control fins, were a crucial modification. This change was specifically driven by the need for internal carriage on the U.S. Air Force F-22 Raptor. As we discussed, stealth demands internal weapons. By making the fins smaller, the F-22 could carry 6 AMRAAMs internally, instead of maybe just 4 with the larger fins, while keeping its crucial stealth profile intact.
That's a direct, fascinating example of the aircraft shaping the missile, as we discussed. Were there further improvements within the C-Series, extending its capabilities beyond just fitting inside the F-22?
Absolutely. The AIM-120 C6, and C7 variants saw significant enhancements that really pushed the envelope. They introduced improved high-off bore sight, or HOBS, capability.
HOBS, high off bore sight. What does that mean in practice for a pilot?
It means improving the missile's ability to maneuver sharply, pull higher Gs, and expanding its seeker's field of view. It makes the missile much more agile, much more capable of engaging targets that are significantly off to the side of the launching aircraft's nose.
So if you're picturing a dogfight, you don't have to point your jet directly at the enemy to shoot. HOBS means the missile can essentially look and turn much sharper and faster off the rail, engaging targets far off your flight path. Huge tactical advantage.
Precisely. It expands the pilot's engagement options dramatically, especially in close-in, highly dynamic fights. The C6 variant also introduced an improved fuse for better lethality. The C7, which began development around 1998, received further improvements in its homing algorithms and offered greater range, though the exact figures are classified.
So the C variant was doing a lot of heavy lifting for the fleet. I remember you mentioned it played a role in compensating for the retirement of the legendary Phoenix missile, too.
Correct. The AIM-120C, particularly with its upgrades and looking ahead to the D model, helped the U.S. Navy bridge the capability gap left by the retirement of the F-14 Tomcat and its unique, very long-range AIM-4 Phoenix missiles. While the Phoenix had truly exceptional range, the F/A-18EF Super Hornets, equipped with the longer-range AMRAAM variants, could achieve a similar strategic effect in terms of BVR reach, albeit with different tactics.
And there was a practical carrier advantage, too.
Yes, a very practical one. The lighter weight of the enhanced AMRAAM compared to the Phoenix offers a critical advantage for carrier operations. Greater bring-back weight. It means an F/A-18 pilot can land back on the pitching deck of the carrier carrying more unexpended ordnance, increasing operational efficiency and safety. Every pound matters when landing on a carrier.
That's a practical but critical advantage, absolutely. And then we have the AIM-120D. This sounds like a major leap forward, building on all those C-model advancements.
It is, undoubtedly. Initial production of the AIM-120D began around 2006. It represents a significantly upgraded AMRAAM with improvements across almost all performance areas. This includes a reported 50% greater range than the already extended range AIM-120 C7. That's a substantial increase. And it has significantly better guidance throughout its entire flight envelope, which translates to a substantially improved kill probability, especially against maneuvering targets.
That 50% range increase is huge, really pushing the boundaries. Is its exact range classified? Can you give us a ballpark?
Yes, the exact maximum range of the AIM-120D is classified, as is typical for cutting-edge systems. However, open-source estimates generally place it around 100 miles or 160 kilometers, potentially even stretching towards 112 miles or 180 kilometers under optimal conditions.
That's getting back towards Phoenix territory, range-wise.
Yeah.
What else makes the D model special?
Beyond just range, it boasts a crucial two-way data link. This allows the missile not only to receive updated target information from the launch aircraft mid-flight, but also to send information back to the aircraft.
So the pilot gets feedback for the missile.
Potentially, yes. Things like seeker status or target confirmation. It also has more accurate navigation thanks to a GPS-enhanced inertial measurement unit, or IMU.
So if the basic INS is like an internal map and compass, the GPS-enhanced IMU is like adding satellite navigation precision to constantly correct its course, making its mid-course flight much more accurate. Right?
Exactly, a much more precise flight path. The D model also features an expanded no-escape envelope, making it harder for targets to evade and even further improved HOBS capability, all while maintaining that high maximum speed of Mach 4.
Impressive package. And when did this advanced variant start entering service? Was it available for foreign sales or initially kept just for U.S. forces?
The AIM-120D is a joint USA-AQSN project. It completed its major operational testing around 2014. The U.S. Navy planned to field it starting then, aiming for fleet-wide deployment by 2020 or shortly after, maybe pushed back slightly by budget issues like sequestration. As for foreign sales, it's a very closely guarded asset due to its advanced capabilities. However, the Royal Australian Air Force was one of the very first international partners approved to receive it.
Australia got the D model.
Yes, they requested and procured 450 AIM-120D missiles in a deal worth about $1.1 billion. These are integrated onto their F/A-18F Super Hornets, their EA-18G Growler electronic attack jets, and crucially, their F-35 Lightning II. It significantly boosts their long-range air combat power.
Anyone else?
Canada was also approved for 32 AIM-120D missiles in 2020, making them another rare early foreign operator. Access to the D model is definitely restricted.
So the AMRAAM family has clearly undergone relentless improvement. What's on the horizon? Future upgrades, even a complete replacement.
The evolution continues. In July 2022, Raytheon, the manufacturer, announced the AIM-120D3. This became the longest-range variant currently in testing, promising even greater reach and potentially other enhancements. There's also the AIM-120C8 variant, which is specifically designed and produced for international customers under what's called the F3R program, ensuring allies also get access to modernized tech.
F3R. What's that?
Form, Fit, Function, Refresh. It's a significant modernization effort applying to all current production AMRAAMs, both the D3 and C8. It involves upgrading 15 circuit cards in the missile's guidance section. Crucially, it enables continuous software upgrades. This means the missile's capabilities can be kept cutting edge throughout its lifespan via software updates, without needing a full hardware redesign every few years. Huge for keeping pace with threats.
That software upgrade path is key in the modern era, and there's even talk of a new AIM-120E variant already. Sounds like they're squeezing every last drop of potential out of this design.
Yes, there were hints of a new AIM-120E variant surfacing around April 2025. It suggests the AMRAAM family is far from done evolving. Beyond these incremental upgrades, the development push, particularly for the D3 and a proposed air-launched adaptation of the ground-launched AMRAAM-R called AMRAAM-X-E, air-launched extended envelope, is very likely driven by what they're seeing from competitors.
Like the Chinese PL-15.
Exactly. The Chinese PL-15 missile, with its reported long-range and advanced capabilities, is a major pacing threat. These AMRAAM upgrades are a direct response, aiming to maintain a technological overmatch.
So competition definitely fuels innovation. But what's the long-term plan? Is there an actual replacement for AMRAAM in the works, something truly next generation?
Yes, for a true long-term replacement, the U.S. began work back in 2017 on the AIM-260 Joint Advanced Tactical Missile, or JATM. This is specifically designed to be a longer-range successor to AMRAAM, intended to contend directly with advanced foreign threats like the PL-15, which some reports suggest might have ranges exceeding 200 or even 300 kilometers.
So JATM is the designated heir apparent. What's his status?
Flight tests for JATM were planned around 2021, with initial operational capability, or IOC, slated for 2022. The plan, theoretically, was to ramp up JATM production to facilitate the end of AMRAAM production around 2026. Of course, the European MBDA Meteor missile is also a major player in this next-generation space, offering its own ramjet advantages.
Raytheon itself suggests AMRAAM isn't just disappearing.
Interestingly, yes. Raytheon, even while developing JATM, suggests that AMRAAM and JTM will be complementary in future force mixes. This implies a continued, though perhaps more specialized, role for the AMRAAM family, even as JATM comes online. It's not likely an immediate phase-out, but more a strategic integration of both systems.
Fascinating. This brings us right to that intersection. The technology of advanced missiles meeting the complex world of international defense sales. Let's shift focus now from the missiles evolution to the strategic chessboard of foreign military sales, FMS, and how it shapes global defense. What's driving the huge demand for U.S. defense equipment right now?
The demand for U.S. defense equipment worldwide has seen a truly significant, almost dramatic increase recently. A major driver, undoubtedly, was Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine starting in February 2022. That conflict rapidly highlighted critical vulnerabilities and urgent needs across Europe, especially for U.S. Army systems. Think air defense, artillery, things like HIMARS.
Right. Ukraine really focused minds in Europe.
It absolutely did. But simultaneously, escalating tensions surrounding China and Taiwan in the Indo-Pacific region have spurred a parallel surge in demand for advanced systems in that theater as well. So while the demand for Army systems in Europe is particularly acute right now, the overall surge is global. Many nations are looking to modernize and bolster their defenses against perceived threats.
So the world needs more U.S. military hardware, and needs it quickly. But there are significant constraints on the U.S. side, aren't there? What are the biggest challenges facing the U.S. defense industrial base?
Absolutely. The U.S. defense industrial base faces real manufacturing capacity limitations. It's not like flipping a switch and suddenly producing twice as many missiles or tanks. Opening new manufacturing lines for complex defense systems is a monumental task. It's costly, it's time-consuming, often requires 18 to 24 months of lead time after a firm commitment from the government.
So companies are hesitant to invest without guaranteed orders.
Exactly. The financial investments and inherent risks for private industry are very high. They're understandably hesitant to significantly ramp up production without long-term stable contracts in place.
And it's not just about building new factories, is it? There are deeper systemic issues with supply chains and the workforce that complicate things further.
Indeed. There's a limited availability of a qualified, specialized workforce: welders, technicians, engineers. That's a challenge that takes years to address through training and recruitment. Furthermore, there are significant supply chain vulnerabilities that often fly under the radar. For example, some key raw materials and critical components are in limited supply globally,
Like rare earth minerals.
like rare earth minerals, essential for advanced electronics, where China dominates the supply chain, or even more basic components. To compound this, for some critical parts that go into high-demand U.S. systems, there might only be a single U.S. manufacturer. When that single source hits its maximum capacity, there aren't readily available alternative suppliers to pick up the slack. That creates bottlenecks impacting the entire production chain for everyone, including allies waiting for FMS deliveries.
So we have booming demand meeting a truly constrained supply. And then there's the FMS system itself, which has been described as inherently slow.
Hmm.
And this really crystallizes a core challenge, doesn't it? How do you design a system for meticulous oversight, ensuring the right weapons go to the right hands safely, accountably, and simultaneously make it agile enough for urgent global needs? It's like trying to be the custom, perfectly safe car on a Formula One timeline. That tension seems central.
That's the core dilemma, precisely. The U.S. FMS enterprise, despite its vital role, has struggled to respond quickly to this increased demand. The DoD even formed an FMS Tiger team in 2022-2023 specifically to examine this, and that Tiger team explicitly highlighted this slowness as a major impediment. The FMS process itself is multi-phase, designed for precision and oversight, which inherently takes time.
Can you walk us through those phases briefly?
Sure. It starts with pre-letter of request, or LOR, discussions, partner nations, and U.S. officials figuring out needs. Then comes formal case development. The LOR is submitted, evaluated by various agencies, and hopefully a letter of offer and acceptance, or LOA, is issued. Once the partner accepts the LOA and makes a deposit, you enter case implementation and execution. This is the longest part. It involves awarding contracts to industry, handling technology transfer, acquiring the equipment, planning logistics, training the partner nation, setting up long-term sustainment, and ongoing program management.
Wow, each step sounds necessary, but you can see how it adds up.
Exactly. Each step, while arguably necessary for accountability and ensuring the partner can actually use the equipment, adds considerable time and complexity to the overall process.
It sounds incredibly thorough, but also incredibly bureaucratic. A real labyrinth. Beyond this inherent slowness, what are the major areas constraining the alignment of FMS with stated U.S. strategic priorities, especially when the stakes feel so high right now?
Randay identifies four major areas constraining this alignment. First, U.S. government policies and the internal bureaucratic dynamics within Washington itself. There's often a surprising lack of coordination, believe it or not, in identifying partner nation defense requirements across various DoD stakeholders.
Yeah.
You've got the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, OUSDP, the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, DSCA, the Geographic Combatant Commands, GCCs, like EUCOM or INDOPACOM, all with slightly different perspectives and maybe priorities.
So different parts of the U.S. government might be pushing different things or sending mixed messages to partners.
Precisely. You can get misaligned messaging that causes friction. For example, DoD and the Embassy Security Cooperation Offices, the SCOs, often focus on enhancing a partner's military capability for future contingencies, building long-term strength. Meanwhile, the Department of State is, quite rightly, more mindful of things like a country's human rights record, its democratic governance, how it has used U.S. equipment in the past. These are all valid concerns, but if they're not fully coordinated early on, they can create friction points and significant delays later in the process.
And is there a clear system for prioritizing which ally gets what equipment first when supply is tight?
That's another major issue. There isn't a single unified definition of prioritization across DoD, nor a systematic, transparent approach for how countries and specific defense systems should be truly prioritized for delivery when demand outstrips supply. It often becomes a case-by-case negotiation rather than a system-wide strategy-driven allocation.
There's that fundamental tension between U.S. military needs and allied requests too, right? Domestic versus FMS.
Yes, that's a big one. Traditionally, the U.S. acquisition system heavily favors domestic procurement for its own forces. U.S. military requirements often take precedence on production lines. However, Recent events, especially Ukraine, have led some FMS experts to argue strongly that U.S. interests might actually be better served by prioritizing expedited delivery to frontline allies first.
That's a counterintuitive argument. Why?
The rationale is compelling. If these frontline allies can quickly receive and integrate the kit they need to deter or defend themselves successfully, it significantly reduces the probability of needing direct U.S. military intervention later. It's a strategic investment in collective security that might ultimately save American lives and resources.
That's a powerful strategic argument for shifting priorities. What about the partner nations themselves? Do their priorities always align with what the U.S. thinks they need?
Not always, and this is the second major area of constraint identified by RAND partner nation government policies and their unique requirements. Allies' defense requirements often extend beyond what NATO or the U.S. specifically assess they need for, say, a contingency with Russia. They prioritize their own inventory needs, their domestic industrial-based concerns, their broader national interests, which can sometimes diverge from U.S. or NATO plans. This might lead them to seek high-end systems for which they aren't necessarily a top U.S. priority based on Washington's framework, creating competing demands on the already strained FMS system.
And their own internal politics and budgets play a role too, presumably.
Well, of course. Internal domestic factors like fluctuating budgets, public opinion, the political climate within the partner nation, these all significantly influence their procurement decisions and timelines, adding another layer of complexity and uncertainty.
And the European Union has its own procurement policies that affect this whole dynamic, right? Especially promoting European defense industries.
Yes. That's the third area of constraint, EU procurement policies. European Union regulations actively promote open competition within the EU and often express a preference for buying from domestic defense industries or from other European allies. This is closely tied to the evolving concept of European strategic autonomy, the desire to reduce Europe's dependence on the U.S. for its security by fostering a stronger, more independent European defense industrial base.
So allies are weighing European options against U.S. FMS offers.
Absolutely. They weigh these European alternatives against U.S. FMS offers based on a complex calculation. System quality, the time it takes to actually get the capability fielded, and the overall lifecycle cost, including long-term sustainment. It's a competitive landscape, not a U.S. monopoly.
So they're looking at a full menu of options, not just automatically defaulting to the U.S. But despite all these constraints and alternatives, the U.S. still often comes out as a top partner for many nations. Why? What's the unique value proposition of FMS?
Despite the hurdles and alternatives, the U.S. remains highly valued for several key reasons. First and foremost, for many allies, especially in NATO, interoperability is absolutely crucial. Buying U.S. ensures equipment, tactics, communication systems are designed to work seamlessly together with NATO and U.S. forces in coalition operations.
That interoperability piece is huge for coalition warfare.
Huge. Second, U.S. system quality is widely considered, rightly or wrongly, qualitatively superior to many alternatives, often incorporating advanced, battle-proven technology. And third, a significant unique selling point is the total package approach that often comes with FMS.
The total package approach. What does that entail? It's not just selling a box of missiles, is it?
Not at all. Imagine a country buying, say, F-16s or F-35s. The total package means the U.S. doesn't just deliver the jets. It includes training for their pilots, training for their ground crews on maintenance, help setting up logistics chains for spare parts, potentially assistance integrating the jets into their national command and control networks, maybe even help developing tactics and doctrine.
So it's providing an entire ecosystem of support, ensuring the investment actually translates into a usable, sustainable capability, not just a very expensive hangar queen. That comprehensive approach seems critical.
It absolutely is. It ensures the partner can truly integrate and sustain the equipment effectively, often for decades. That's a massive advantage over simply buying hardware off the shelf from another supplier who might not offer that long-term partnership.
Okay, that makes the enduring appeal much clearer. Let's pivot back to the AMRAAM specifically now and look at its foreign sales through this FMS lens. It has a truly global reach, over 14,000 produced for the U.S. and 33 international customers. Let's dive into some examples. Canada is a key purchaser, right?
Yes, Canada is a significant operator and offers a fascinating insight. They initially bought AIM-120 C5s and later C7s to replace their old AIM-7 Sparrows on their CF-18 Hornets. Then, as we mentioned, in 2020, the U.S. approved Canada for 32 of the advanced AIM-120D missiles, making them one of the few authorized foreign D-model operators.
And you mentioned something fascinating earlier. Sometimes countries buy missiles that outrange their current aircraft radars.
Yes, and Canada is an example. This suggests a forward-looking strategy. They might be anticipating future radar upgrades for their jets or planning to rely heavily on external targeting data from networked assets like AWACS planes or targeting information passed from other allied fighters via data link. It speaks to a vision of integrated network warfare where the shooter doesn't necessarily need to be the sensor.
That's a really interesting strategic choice, buying for the network, not just the platform. Taiwan has also been a consistent buyer, driven by obvious geopolitical pressures.
Correct. Taiwan's purchases are always viewed through that regional security lens. They bought two 18 AIM-120 C-7s back in 2007, adding to earlier C-5s for their F-16 fleet. More recently, and very strategically, in October 2024, they agreed to purchase 123 AMRAAM air missiles as part of their NASAM's ground-based air defense system acquisition.
AMRAAM-ER, the ground-launched version.
Exactly. This highlights their move towards a robust, layered, integrated air defense network, combining air-launched and ground-launched capabilities to deter potential aggression. It's a smart move towards resilience.
Finland's case was intriguing. You mentioned some issues earlier, a mysterious bug.
Yes, Finland agreed to buy AIM-120 C-7s back in 2008, but the sales stalled for a while due to what reports called a mysterious bug causing rocket motor failures during cold weather testing. Not ideal for Finland, obviously.
Not ideal at all.
Definitely created headaches. But despite that initial setback, Finland's strategic importance, especially now as a NATO member, were much high. In fact, Finland became a top recipient of U.S. arms offers in 2020 with that massive $12.5 billion package for F-35s, which naturally includes associated AMRAAMs and other systems. It shows the strategic relationship often overrides temporary technical glitches.
A testament to the resilience of these defense ties. What about other operators? Has AMRAAM truly become a global standard?
It really has, remarkably so. Malaysia, for instance, got approval for AIM-120 C-7s in 2015 for about $21 million. But beyond specific examples, the list is vast. Australia, Belgium, Bahrain, Chile, Czech Republic, Denmark, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Indonesia, Israel, Italy, Japan, Jordan, Kuwait.
Keep going.
Lithuania got them with NASAMs, Morocco, Netherlands, Norway, Oman. Poland's getting a new batch of C-8s in 2024. Portugal, Qatar, Romania, Singapore, South Korea, Switzerland, Spain, Sweden, Thailand, Turkey. It's a huge list.
And Ukraine, critically.
And critically, Ukraine has been receiving AMRAAMs for its NASAM system since 2022, absolutely vital for their defense against Russian air attacks. Looking ahead, Slovakia, Bulgaria, and even Argentina are listed as potential future operators. The demand clearly continues.
That's an impressive, truly global footprint. Okay, let's hone in now on a specific high-stakes case study that really brings together all these threads: technology, geopolitics, FMS complexities. That's Pakistan's strategic pursuit of the AIM-120D. This seems driven by intense regional dynamics.
This is a really important case, illustrating that complex interplay perfectly. On July 2nd, 2025, Pakistan's Air Chief Marshal Zahir Ahmed Babur Sidhu visited Washington, D.C. This was significant, the first such visit by a serving Pakistan Air Force chief in over a decade. It clearly signaled a serious effort to revive what have been, frankly, strained defense ties, a key explicit goal of his visit, pushing for the advanced AIM-120D AMRAAMs for Pakistan's F-16 Block 52 fleet.
And this push is directly linked to the long-standing tensions with India, right? Especially India's recent acquisition of Rafale jets armed with Meteor missiles.
Precisely. Pakistan's pursuit of the D model is largely driven by India's rapidly growing air power, particularly those French-made Rafales armed with the Meteor. The Meteor, with its ramjet engine, offers a superior no-escape zone compared to conventional rocket-powered missiles like Pakistan's current inventory. This creates a perceived technological gap that Pakistan is acutely keen to close to maintain some aerial balance, or at least parity.
And the timing was critical, too, coming after that recent conflict, Operation Sindoor.
Yes, the timing after Operation Sindoor in April 2025 was crucial. That was an intense, though localized, conflict sparked by a Pakistan-backed terrorist attack, which led to Indian precision strikes against 11 Pakistani Air Force bases.
So Sindoor, despite being limited, exposed some real vulnerabilities in Pakistan's air defenses, making this missile acquisition feel even more urgent for them.
It seems so. The Indian strikes reportedly exposed weaknesses, particularly in Pakistan's Chinese-supplied HQ-9B and HQ-16 surface-to-air missile systems, which apparently proved less effective than hoped. And while Pakistani claims of downing Indian jets, including Rafales, back in the February 2019 skirmish remain largely unverified by independent sources, the perceived shortcomings of their main Chinese BVR missile, the PL-15E, well, that might be prompting the push for the AIM-120D.
What are the perceived shortcomings of the PL-15E?
It has a decent reported range, maybe 145 kilometers, but it lacks the Meteor's ramjet propulsion, which sustains speed much longer at range, creating that larger no-escape zone. India's Rafales, with their advanced AESA radar and Meteor missiles, definitely possess a significant long-range engagement advantage right now. Pakistan wants to counter that edge.
Makes sense from their perspective. But given all this, what are the major hurdles Pakistan faces in getting the AIM-120 approved by the U.S.? It sounds like an incredibly sensitive sale for Washington.
Oh, there are significant hurdles, a complex balancing act for U.S. foreign policy. First, you have the strict U.S. export controls, the ITAR regulations, and so on. These are designed specifically to prevent sensitive technology leaks, ensuring advanced military capabilities don't fall into the wrong hands or proliferate in ways that destabilize regions. That's paramount for Washington.
And that leads directly to the second huge hurdle, right? Pakistan's deep and growing defense relationship with China. That must be a massive red flag for the U.S.
Exactly. Pakistan's close defense ties with Beijing, including major arms deals like their plans to acquire potentially 40 J-35 stealth jets from China, raises serious U.S. concerns. Washington worries constantly that sensitive American technologies, like the secrets within an AIM-120D guidance system, could potentially be accessed, analyzed, or even reverse engineered by Chinese engineers if shared with Pakistan. It's a fundamental non-proliferation risk and a strategic competition issue, especially given the complex, sometimes contradictory alliances involved.
Absolutely. And beyond those immediate tech security concerns, I imagine there's the domestic political landscape in the U.S. to navigate congressional opposition.
Huge factor. Congressional opposition has historically been fierce regarding major arms sales to Pakistan. Lawmakers often raise concerns about Pakistan's reliability as a partner, particularly in counterterrorism, its human rights record, and the potential for advanced U.S. arms to upset the regional balance, especially against India, which is a key U.S. strategic partner in the Indo-Pacific. So any administration, including the current Biden administration, while perhaps pursuing a pragmatic approach to maintaining some level of ties with Pakistan for regional stability, walks a very fine line. It's not just about what Pakistan wants or needs. It's about the geopolitical risks Washington is willing to take and the domestic political capital they're willing to spend to push a controversial deal through Congress.
So even with alternatives like the JF-17 fighter, co-developed with China, and using the PL-12 missile with a shorter 70 to 100-kilometer range, Pakistan still prioritizes the AIM-120D for its F-16s. What's the latest U.S. stance on defense ties, given these complexities?
Well, the JF-17, while cost-effective for Pakistan, generally lacks the F-16's proven multi-role versatility and combat record. So the AIM-120D on their existing F-16s remains a strategic priority for the PAF. The Biden administration's approval in 2022 of a $450 million F-16 sustainment package indicated a pragmatic approach focusing on maintaining existing platforms rather than selling new advanced capabilities. It suggested a desire to keep Pakistan engaged for regional stability and counterterrorism, but the sale of new, highly advanced defensive arms like the AIM-120D remains extremely politically sensitive due to all the factors we've discussed. It's a very delicate balance.
This brings us neatly to how the U.S. tries to navigate these complex FMS relationships more broadly, aligning supply with strategic priorities. That RAND report you mentioned offers a framework for prioritizing FMS cases. What are the key variables they use?
The RAND framework is designed to help DoD think more systematically about prioritizing FMS, especially for high-demand systems where supply is tight. It's based on two key variables. First, they assess a country's role in U.S. and NATO defense plans. How critical is this ally for collective defense, particularly in high-end scenarios against major adversaries? And second, they look at the level of U.S. government support needed for that partner to reach full operational capability, or FOC, with the systems they acquire. How much help do they need with training, integration, logistics, sustainment?
Okay, so it's a matrix. Strategic importance versus the amount of hand-holding required. What are the 6 categories of allies that emerge from this framework?
Based on those two variables, RAND identifies 6 categories. Priority 1 are supported frontline defenders, critical allies needing significant U.S. help. Priority 2 are capable frontline defenders, critical allies who can largely manage on their own. Then you have Priority 3, supported troop contributors, and Priority 4, capable troop contributors, countries providing forces for various missions, again split by support needs. Finally, Priority 5, key enablers, and Priority 6, committed supporters, round out the list. Each category suggests a different tailored approach for security cooperation and FMS prioritization.
That seems like a logical way to structure thinking. What were some of the key findings from Rand's research about how these FMS relationships actually work on the ground? How do allies behave in this system?
One significant finding relates to what Rand calls novice partners, those with less experience in modern defense procurement and complex systems integration. They often face a very steep learning curve navigating the FMS process. These partners require substantial U.S. support, especially in the early phases, figuring out their actual requirements, understanding the U.S. bureaucracy, and effectively integrating the new systems into their forces. That initial support is crucial for them to eventually reach FOC and make the investment worthwhile.
So it's not just about selling the gear, it's ensuring they can actually use it effectively for the long haul. And do allies always prioritize U.S. systems, or do they look elsewhere?
Not always. The research confirmed that allies' defense procurement priorities are primarily driven by their own inventory needs and national interests. These sometimes diverge significantly from U.S. or NATO assessments of what they should buy for collective defense purposes. This can lead them to request high-end U.S. systems for which they might not be a top priority in Washington's strategic framework, creating additional competing demands on the FMS system.
Understandable. They have their own sovereign defense strategies. What about alternatives to U.S. FMS? Do they actively look to other suppliers?
Yes, absolutely. NATO allies in particular often weigh U.S. FMS offers against alternative procurements from their own domestic industries or, crucially, from other European allies. This is partly driven by those EU policies promoting open competition and often preferring European solutions tied to that idea of European strategic autonomy we discussed. Allies carefully weigh these alternatives based on system quality, delivery time, overall cost, and industrial benefits. It's a competitive marketplace.
So they're shopping around, carefully balancing national interests, industrial benefits, and strategic partnerships. But despite these alternatives and the FMS system's challenges, the U.S. still often comes out as a top partner. Why that enduring value?
Several key reasons endure. That NATO interoperability is paramount for many. U.S. system quality is often perceived as superior, battle-tested. And as we discussed, that total package approach, the comprehensive training, technical support, maintenance, logistics, help, that's a significant differentiator, ensuring long-term capability and partnership. It's the full life cycle support.
Given these findings, constraints, and strengths, what are RAND's big recommendations for optimizing the FMS system? How can it better align with strategic priorities and meet demand more efficiently?
One key recommendation is creating a fast-track option for experienced, capable partners, specifically those in categories 2 and 4, capable frontline defenders and capable troop contributors. These are nations needing relatively little U.S. handholding. This fast track would allow for potentially limited technology release scrutiny for routine requests, skipping some administrative steps, and moving much faster to contracting. Think of it like global entry for trusted travelers. A trusted partner program may be valid for 3 to 5 years, renewable.
That makes sense. Streamline for the capable, focus resources on those needing more help.
Exactly. It would expedite critical deliveries to key allies and free up limited U.S. personnel and resources to focus on the novice partners who need more intensive support.
What else did RAND recommend?
Another crucial recommendation is leveraging U.S. Army training capabilities and forces already deployed in theater to better advise novice partners. This means utilizing specialized units like the Security Force Assistance Brigades, SFABs, the long-standing state partnership programs, SPP, run by the National Guard, and rotational forces. Their mission would be hands-on help with system integration, developing operational concepts tailored to the partner's reality, and building sustainable maintenance capacity. Help them truly absorb the capability, not just receive the boxes.
And improving coordination within the U.S. government itself. Always
Yeah.
a challenge, but critical here.
Absolutely critical. RAND stresses improving joint and interagency coordination, getting USAR-AF, UCOM, DSCA, the embassy teams, all on the same page earlier and more consistently. This includes providing honest, realistic timeline assessments to allies, acknowledge upfront if the U.S. process will be slow, and accept that allies might need to seek faster alternatives elsewhere if U.S. timelines don't meet their urgent operational needs. Transparency builds trust, even if news isn't always good.
Honesty about timelines is key. And finally, what about novel security cooperation approaches?
These include ideas like convening periodic, multilateral operational Army staff talks, maybe focusing on specific regions like the Baltics, Black Sea, or Nordic countries. The goal is to bring allies and partners together more regularly in collaborative forums to discuss shared threats, hammer out interoperability solutions, develop common TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, and build truly collective capability rather than just bilateral relationships. All aimed at moving FMS towards strategic alignment, not just first in, first out.
So we've thoroughly explored the AMRAAM, its lineage, its capabilities, and we've delved into the strategic maze of foreign military sales. But the world of air defense is always moving forward. What does the future hold beyond AMRAAM?
The future is definitely focused on countering more sophisticated threats. For next-gen air-to-air missiles, as we discussed, the U.S. is actively developing the AIM-260 JATM. It's explicitly designed to be longer range than AMRAAM, specifically to counter peer adversary weapons like China's PL-15.
Right, directly addressing that competitive pressure. And the European Meteor missile is also a key player in that space.
Exactly. The MBDA Meteor, with its ramjet, offers different performance characteristics. Interestingly, though, as Raytheon themselves suggest, AMRAAM and JTM will likely be complementary. This implies the AMRAAM family, with ongoing upgrades like the D3, C8, and maybe even that hinted at AIM-120E, will continue to play a vital, perhaps specialized role alongside JATM for the foreseeable future. It's not vanishing overnight.
So a mixed fleet, leveraging the strengths of both. Beyond air-launched missiles, AMRAAM's technology has also migrated to ground-based air defense, right? Expanding its versatility.
Absolutely. That's where the AMRAAM, our extended range, comes in. It originated from the earlier SLAMRAM project, which basically took the seeker and guided section of an AMRAAM and put it on the larger, more powerful rocket motor of an evolved Sea Sparrow missile, ESSM. It gives the proven brain of AMRAAM much longer legs when launched from the ground.
And this became integral to the NASAM system, which we've seen deployed effectively, notably in Ukraine.
That's right. After SLAMRAM funding was cut, development for the NASAM's version of AMRAAM were restarted around 2014, recognizing the need for a modern, mobile, medium-range, ground-based air defense system. Integrating AMRAAM significantly boosted NASAM's engagement envelope, a reported 50% increase in max range and a 70% increase in max altitude compared to using standard AMRAAMs from the same launcher. Recent tests, including one in Feb 2024 with an improved motor and the C8 guidance head, keep it relevant.
And this ground-launched version is also finding foreign customers, demonstrating its global appeal for integrated air defense.
Yes. Qatar ordered AMRAAM Era as part of its NASAMS purchase in 2019, and as we mentioned, Taiwan agreed to buy NASAM systems with AMRAAM air missiles in October 2024, seeing it as a vital layer in their air defense strategy. Its adaptability is a huge plus.
This all brings us to the broader implications for global security. It's clear FMS is a powerful tool, but it's just one tool in the security cooperation toolbox, isn't it? It can't solve everything alone.
That's a crucial takeaway, and it's vital perspective. FMS is indeed one of many tools, alongside things like international armaments cooperation, where allies develop systems together, joint military exercises, key leader engagements, sending advisors, rotational force deployments. It's important to recognize that SMS by itself isn't always the fastest or most effective tool for building collective capability rapidly, especially given the timelines and complexities we've discussed.
So it's about optimizing all those resources, FMS, training, exercises, for the maximum strategic effect, especially when resources are scarce and demand is high.
Precisely. Implementing a rigorous FMS case prioritization framework, like RAND proposed, becomes essential to make the most efficient use of limited defense industrial output and government resources when demand is sky high. It allows for a more strategic deployment of assets.
And ultimately, it's about building that collective capability, enhancing alliance interoperability, making the whole alliance stronger than the sum of its individual parts.
Yes, the U.S. military, including the Army, can play a greater, more integrated role in security cooperation, helping allies develop comprehensive combat capability by bringing the right tools to bear, whether that's through FMS, helping them leverage their own domestic industry, or connecting them with other allies. This holistic approach improves overall NATO readiness for high-end conflict. It ensures that when an ally gets a system, they're not just getting hardware, but the full operational capacity, the training, the doctrine, the sustainment to use it effectively as part of the team. That's true strength.
What an incredible journey we've taken today. We've gone from the intricate technical details of the AIM-120 AMRAAM, tracing its evolution and performance, all the way to the complex strategic dance of international arms sales, foreign military sales, and the profound geopolitical forces shaping global defense. What really stands out to me, and hopefully to you listening, is that every piece of military hardware, every defense deal, is deeply embedded in this vast web of history, current geopolitical tensions, and critically, future strategic visions.
It's a powerful reminder that the world of defense and international security is anything but static. As technology races ahead and global threats constantly evolve, the mechanisms we rely on for deterrence and defense have to adapt too, often at a similarly rapid and complex pace.
Indeed. So, as you reflect on this deep dive, here's something to consider. How might that relentless pursuit of full operational capability for an ally, getting them truly ready to fight with the systems they buy, how might that pursuit, when balanced against the inherent complexities, the bureaucratic hurdles, the lengthy timelines of international defense procurement, how might all that redefine what true military strength and genuine alliance interoperability actually mean in the coming decades?
That's a deep question. It challenges our traditional notions of power, partnership, and readiness.
It certainly does. It's definitely something worth mulling over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into air-to-air missiles and foreign military sales. If you found this discussion as fascinating as we did, please do like, share, and subscribe to The Deep Dive for more in-depth explorations like this one.
And we genuinely love to hear your thoughts and questions on this complex topic. Please put them forward in the comment section below.
Until next time, stay curious.